things on site. Well, what your bio really doesn't say about you are the factors that determine who you are and what you are. And I'm talking about things like character, your ability to endure, and your tolerance. I have been in the game a long time. And over the last couple of years, working on the criminal history project for Clark County, and also being in elections, I can honestly say that I've had some character expanding experiences that have stretched me beyond my capacity, at least it felt that way, to where I felt that I had to grab every tool out of my project management toolbox in order to succeed. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, I will not live long enough to have had every difficult project management experience we had. So therefore, I encourage those of you that have led their projects, yourselves, or organizations through difficult times to contribute to this conversation with your key points. I know what I know, but I don't know it all, but I'm always willing to learn. Speaking about leading through turbulence or endurance, I want to plug a couple of movies I saw over the weekend, because after I saw these movies, I said I had nothing to complain about. One of these movies is called Unbroken. I think the title says it all. One of the catchy phrases I liked in that movie was, if you can make it, if you can take it, you can make it. Also, in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King, there's a movie called Selma that was recently released. Great movie. He obviously knew how to lead through turbulence. And one of the catchy phrases in that movie I love is, we shall overcome. And I think our background helps prepare us for the environments that we get ourselves involved in our daily work. It helps to prepare me. Because I tell people I have been chewed up, chewed out, and chewed on by the best. At the time, it didn't feel that good, but today I thank those guys for preparing me for my experience at the election department. Now, I would be remiss to come to a project management meeting and not make reference to PMI. Now, I'm not going to do an exhaustive speech on the 10 knowledge areas. I just basically want to focus on human resources and communication as they apply to this subject. Because we know that for human resources, we have to have the right people doing the right thing at the right time. But in the election department, I also had to be cognizant of the fact that we need to pay attention to the politics, the cultural differences, just like in every organization, because they can derail you, and that can also derail your project. Along with that, there's communication. Someone's going to say, providing the right information to the right people at the right time, and more importantly, in the right amount. Communications itself is a very powerful tool, because you can influence the way people act or react. And I definitely had to do a lot of influencing at the elections department in my year and a half there. So I'm basically mentally preparing myself, and I encourage you to get close to your PMI, because there's a lot of good information in there. I've already talked about that. Now, don't be disappointed. The PMI itself is not the Holy Grail. There's other materials that I use to prepare myself mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally for the demands of my work environment that puts me through. And I'm not going to go through this entire list. Some of you might have read some of these books, but I want to highlight a couple of them. For example, Think and Grow Rich. What I like about this book is that it supports an undying desire to succeed, and finding others that support you to achieve your goals, to meet your desire. That's key. The 5 dysfunctions of a team, I call that my Bible. I believe in the principles of this book, and when I met my team for the first day, I said, hey, trust, conflict, commitment, accountability, and results is what I'm all about. Trust is a major factor to me, because when you have trust, you can have conflict, right? Because you know that you're going to the other person has good intentions. So I support that. We all have worked on large and small projects with a lot of people. And I would be naive to say that everyone that works with you has great intentions, right? Because we're all competitors. Let's face it, we're all competing for something. So understanding the art of war, knowing the terrain, knowing how to wage war, even using spies is what I use to survive. It's a great book. Before starting at the election department, I thought it was important to gather as much intelligence as possible. The election department itself prides itself on having successful elections over the last 10 to 15 years. That's fabulous. My new boss used to remind me every week, because he had gotten there 3 months before I got on the scene, and said, hey, we want to continue that. The organization itself is small, about 40 people. It swells up to over several hundred during the election, depending on the size of the election itself. The environment, because of that, success factor, was very stressful, low patience, low tolerance. Because with elections, not unlike other projects I've worked on, their deadlines by law don't move. It's going to happen. And you've got to admit, we have a public audience, and that makes it stressful enough. Some of the good news is that the team that I was going to inherit contributed vastly to the successes of the elections department. And it's about 5 people. I was quickly saddened, however, to learn that one of them was attempting to leave before I got here. Another one was going to leave in 3 months. As a matter of fact, the first day she met me, she handed me her resignation. Another one's going to leave within a year. And at the same time, I could hear my boss in the back of my head saying, we need to be successful. Now, 3/4 of the knowledge base has walked out of the room. We always can replace people, but it takes years to replace knowledge and know-how. So intelligence is important because that information gave me a little bit of an advantage in some of the things I need to do prior to even starting the first day. And we'll talk more about that. Staying calm through the chaos is one of the other things. I want to talk a little bit about my team. My predecessor, I want to give him credit because he had brought the elections department out of the dark ages and into the 21st century. He almost single-handedly, evolved new processes, improved the department. And he also done a great job of building a team. These individuals today were still devoted to him even as I was there. It's a great thing. But there was changes at the top, and he became unhappy, and he decided to depart. Now, when somebody in your family is unhappy, all of a sudden, you become unhappy. And I can remember talking to my new teammates, because I used to hang out at night, try to get to know them, and they said, Emmitt, you're like the stepfather. Anybody ever been a stepfather? Anybody had a stepfather? I had one. And it made me think about that because no matter how hard he tried to get close to me, I wouldn't let him in. And I'm looking at this team because I was going to try to get close to them because, we need to work together. And it made me realize that it's going to be difficult to get in. Can you identify with that? Any military people here? A couple? Appreciate your service. One of the individuals in the middle of that slide with the yellow face, I love the military attitude. Because one of the things I did prior to coming to the office, I made calls to each one of them. They hadn't even met me yet. And her response to me was, we still have a job to do, and we will get the job done. She gave me something to work with, right? So the others, I said, man, I'm just going to have to just figure it out. Now, on the board, I talked about some of the obstacles that I faced. This organization looked just like other organizations, right? They got the gossip. You have deception. I mean, I had some folks that were willing to dig my grave, volunteering to push me off a cliff, waiting for me to fail. And at the same time, I can hear a boss in the back of my head saying, Emmitt, we need to have successful elections. My greatest challenge was I couldn't do it by myself. I still had to figure out how to turn this team around. I have something on here called Pavlov's dog syndrome. You all heard of Pavlov's dog?
Yes.
Well, these people have become conditioned because of the environment. Traditionally, in the elections department, they believed in public floggings, right? Because the stakes are high. Very militaristic type of environment. My management style was different. As I communicated to my team, I said, I'm going to treat you guys as professionals, right? I believe in self-empowering teams. Because if you know what to do, you know when to do it. You probably don't need me to stand over your shoulder and watch you do it. I asked each one of my teammates, when I spoke with them, I said, what's the best way to work with you? Some people struggle with that, right? Because they never had the question asked of them. But I'm just defining boundaries. And so I had to go about the work of building a self-empowering team. And there's also the unknown, even within myself. Because the expectations were pretty high that day one, I was going to have 10 years worth of knowledge, and I'd only been there 10 months. Right, so I was feeling a bit of the pressure as well.
Thank you.
Now this diagram is a little confusing. That's me in the left-hand corner there. You're right. What I have there is the grief cycle. Everybody know what grief is? And so I realized that this team was in grief. And I also realized that you can't push people through grief, right? They have to come through it in their own time. And so one of the strategies that I employed was to let them go through their grieving cycle, but take every opportunity to move them to a functioning team. Because we still need to get to that forming, storming, down to performing stage. So a lot of countless nights, a lot of reaching out to people and trying to figure them out. I know this. She shook my hand, right? She saw me reach out. But when you reach out to people and they don't reach back, it's hard to build a team, right? So even for my predecessor as he left, I was trying to work with him as well because he had something I wanted. He had knowledge. So even prior to coming to the elections department, I established a 1 month, let's get together, let's hang out, let's talk about elections. And he was open to that. Also too, I told his boss that I wanted to set something up. So they also supported that. So using some leverage also helped. And also to build a bridge to him, because I realized that he was also in grief. He had built that department, and all of a sudden he was no longer there. And I told him, I said, you know what, hey man, I feel your pain. I empathize with where you are. You are a very smart man. And if I have the opportunity to advocate on your behalf, I will. And I did. And that did more to say, hey, this guy's okay. And he first he told me, Emmitt, it's not you. It's that organization. They were no longer seeing eye to eye. But I just needed him long enough to help me out. This was my assessment of the organization. Because you gotta know where you are, know what you're dealing with to apply, some type of remedy. As you guys look at this slide, can you tell me what's the most important component on that slide? I agree with you. Because it's the foundation of every single relationship. So I realized I had to get in the business of selling trust. Now, I can tell people to trust me, I'm trustworthy, but they're just words. How do you build trust? Yeah, you got to put some time and some experiences together, right? And also one of my staff members said to me, because she had made a mistake, And I focused on solving the problem versus flogging her, okay? And she said that did more to instill confidence in her and in me that it improved our working relationship. So when I say calmer heads prevail, even in the midst of chaos, actually works, at least in this particular case. So on my first day of meeting with the team, I wanted to instill my principles. I wanted to sell my religion, right? And a lot of this comes out of the books I showed you guys earlier. And as you see, trust is the foundation of every relationship. So if you're out there, you gotta get people to trust you. And once they trust you, the doors just open up. Trust is earned. And so elections provided many opportunities for me to earn their trust. Clarity. People need clear direction, clear goals, and clear understanding. That means we're going to communicate, right? Now, I like commitment as well, along with conflict, because I tell folks, we could disagree, and we could strongly believe in what we think is right, but be in opposite directions. And I can say, Mark, I think your idea stinks, but I'm going to follow you because one of our ideas has got to go forward. But keep the door open, that if it doesn't work, take mine. Because I don't need to be the star. We just need to win. And conflict. One of my styles is, I say, hey, say what you got to say. Say it when you have to say it. Because what it does for me, it tells me where you stand. It's easy to solve a problem that you can see. It's a lot harder to solve one when people are silent, talking in back rooms, in hallways, things of that nature. So that means that I had to be able to absorb a lot. And I go back to that training I was telling you guys earlier. I've been chewed out by the very best. And it just goes through you. Because now they have highlighted the problem, now you can take a chance of solving it. And what I used to do when I was upset with someone, or things not getting along, I would say, hey, let's go take a walk. And we would just walk around the election department, right? It gives them the chance to get it out, gives them a chance to figure out what's going on with them, and we move forward. Last but not least, I like focus. I find that if people have something to target, their collective attention is on delivering results. If they don't have anything to shoot for, they shoot at you, they shoot at each other. Everyone agree with that?
Yeah.
All right. I'm in the business of selling trust. I stole this out of one of the books. Because with trust, efficiency goes up, problems go down, right? And I take an opportunity every day to figure out how can I get people to trust me. Tamara and I had a conversation a year or so ago. I was talking to one of my members, and I said something to her, and she started crying. And I said, what the? I didn't say anything hard. I'm just something innocent. And I said to myself, I don't think she trusts me enough. Right? Because we didn't communicate well, and she didn't hear what I was saying, and somehow we were missing. And she said, Emmitt, I love my job. I'm doing a great job. And I didn't say anything about the quality of her work. But I was listening to what she said. So I began to work on getting her to trust me and our relationship improved. Within 3 months of being there, I had to come up with something to show folks that I was doing something, right? So theoretically, you do some type of assessment of the organization now that you're on the inside. I've already listed the problems that we were having, as far as 80% turnover, retirements happening, institutional knowledge just walking outside the door, right? And you still have a deadline to meet. Some of the good things we had is that at least if people were unhappy, they were committed to doing a good job for as long as they were there. And also gave us an opportunity to bring in new people. Because I've learned too that sometimes you just can't change people that don't want to change. And you're going to burn a lot of energy, right? And it's going to take more time. And even one of my most hardened team members that was going to retire in 3 months, and I could start to see them turn, right? And I think that what's important is your personality, and I have that, like I call it, guerrilla communication. I'm going to be all over you at every opportunity, right? And eventually, you know that they're turning the corner when they start to help you, and they start to advocate for you. And I said, hey, she's turning, but it's going to take more time. And unfortunately, she retired. Now, she just walked outside the door, but I need something from her. Well, I was able to get a contract with her to help us if we needed to call. Because first month I was in there, that wouldn't have happened. I'm done, and I hope you guys die. But she was starting to turn. And also, with management, once you say, hey, here's my assessment, 80% of the people are gone, the election success rate is in jeopardy, they start to give you help. They start to make maneuvers on our behalf. But I couldn't have done that unless I was able to show them something, right? Misinformation is a threat, because when people have a lot of fear, a lot of low confidence, and if they want to see you fail, they start planting in bad information. Well, how do you counter that? How do you counter bad information? Anybody know? Because I'm trying to find out. The reality is you can't chase it. I build more advocates than adversaries. And those advocates will speak for you when someone's delivering bad information. And I think that helped to contain some of the chaos that we were going through. And as I mentioned earlier, public confidence was always at risk. Something about elections that's in the paper that's not right. They're unrelenting, they're unforgiving, and they never forget. So that was an additional threat that we had to our team. Another thing I did was to put together some type of strategic plan that said, hey, where we're going to be from one year to the next. And what that did is help to galvanize the team to look forward, not just to look at where they were. It helped to say, hey, with management, we're going someplace. And this is what I need to get there, and can you help me do it? And that was one of the maneuvers that helped to get the organization focused, on our team focused on going somewhere. Because even a hobo doesn't want to get on a train that's not going anywhere, right? We all have heard of the triple constraint. With my management style, I don't micromanage. At least I try not to. Okay. I tell the team that I just want to manage results. In elections, we work a tremendous amount of overtime during certain times of the year. And people get burned out. And I say to them, hey, I don't care who does the overtime, as long as we have someone there to get it done. And it was great to see how they negotiated the overtime with each other. They were actually starting to work with each other, and I could just stand back and just let it happen. And so they were starting to become more self-empowered. And I thought that was a great deal to manage these types of people. Now, granted, there are those where you have to bring the hammer out, but the hammer is not the solution 90% of the time. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about year one and what we did to overcome some of the barriers. This may be hard to see for some of you guys. I already talked about build trust and communicate. And I said earlier, in elections, the best communication is there's no surprises. And I've had to tell my boss a couple of times, hey man, this is not going to work. And I watch his face go, oh. Right? I'd rather have that happen in that room at that moment than happen in the paper. Never be afraid to communicate, never be afraid to reach out for help, and don't diminish anyone if they didn't. Put in the work. Now, that means that Emmitt worked a lot of late nights. And he did. But it also meant that the folks that were watching me say, you know, that guy is putting in the work. He's trying to make it happen. And so to some degree, that started to build their confidence. I was telling one of the young men tonight that my goal for 2015 versus last year is to get my life back. Okay. Now, what they didn't know is that I am a recovering workaholic. I was going to be there anyway. I think that's one of the plagues that affects people that work in this profession. I'm just driven. I'm the one that has to slow myself down. One of the leadership qualities I like is I don't like to lead by ego or lead by title or by ego. I explain to my team, we're just guys to get it done. There's only a few occasions when you got to bring out the title, and that's when arguments get out of hand or you got to do someone's performance evaluation. Because again, it matters that we get there. Doesn't matter how we got there, we got there. Build an army? Yes, you need an army. Okay? And I'm talking about an army of advocates, an army of supports. Be it vendors, people from outside departments. I had to lean on the departments because when I didn't have resources to do something, I leaned on another department. And it was because of the relationship I had established with them. They said, hey, I will lend you a resource. The resource that left the organization, and then we established a contract with, I was able to reach out to a group of contractors and say, hey, I got a person coming out there, right? That's the one I want. You know, because that's the one that has all the experience. No one's going to compete with her. And that helped. When you have an army, you also have extra eyes and ears. When I talk about leveraging spies, I mean in a good way. Because people will let you know that's a cliff beyond 50 yards from now. I would have known it. So when people start to look out for you, it's because you built some advocates. Always be professional. A guy actually yelled at me one day, and he was working for me. I looked at him like this. You must be crazy. Now, I did not scream back, but we did come to the side later on because he did it in the company of the rest of the team. Now, I talk about power. Of course, I had the power to smite him down, right? But I chose not to, because the art of war says if you have true power, you don't have to use it. We had the conversation, and we talked about what that looked like. We talked about what it would feel like if I had done it to him. We talked about what type of team we wanted to create. Now, I said, I suggest you do this, that you go and apologize, and inform the rest of the team that, hey, you just felt too much stress. And he said, yes, I can do that. Because you created it, you clean it up. Okay? People may call me a lot of things, but one of the things they call me is fair. I have a friend that worked in the prison system, and he worked with a lot of bad people. And unfortunately, sometimes you may see some of these bad people out on the street, right? And he says, you know what? They say you were always fair. And because you were always fair, I respect that. And I say the same with my team. I'm gonna always be fair because I expect that. I've lived a long time, and unfortunately, I have not always received fair play, right? But you want to give it back. I talked about embracing conflict. I crave it because people highlight where they are as a form of communication. They get their issues out on the table and gives you an opportunity to solve them. And if you got trust, you will get it solved without any personal feelings being broken. And I make a lot of mistakes, but I learn to apologize quickly because we want to turn things around and move on. Politics. I talked earlier about politics. Can we live without them? It's always going to be there, right? And if you decide not to play politics, then you will be affected by the politics around you, right? But you don't want that to dominate your working experience, correct? So yeah, I'll drop a word every now and then about something I need, something that's not happening, and I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? One lady that I painted the ground I walked on. When I talked to one of her friends, I said, she's the greatest person, and I enjoy working with her. You know what's going to happen? That message gets back to the person that you're having difficulties with, and sometimes it helps to turn them. People like to bait you in these conversations where you talk bad about each other. As Mama used to say, never talk bad about anybody if you don't have anything good to say. And that is a true story. Embrace that. And as I said earlier, some people you can't help, but hopefully you can quarantine them so they don't cause much damage, right? And the best way to quarantine them is to outnumber them. If you have more advocates on your side of the fence, then it minimizes their effect. And Q-tip and Teflon. I say, I'll tell folks that I get up in the morning, I put my Teflon suit on every day. I don't leave home without it, because I cannot take it personally. In high stress, high emotional environments, people sometimes lose control. I have to learn to absorb it, let it pass through me, because I'm focused on delivering. Because if I play into that, it's just another distraction. They have gotten me out of my game, they've got in my head, now all of a sudden, I can't function. Now, it takes a lot to just absorb. Because if you cut me, I bleed just like everybody else. I'm focusing on healing fast and moving on. But again, that's years of going through difficult times, that builds a thick skin, years of focus on delivering, that I don't care about that other stuff. I just want to get it done. Risk planning, my plans have plans, and they have plans. Can't live without it. I encourage you to do that. Maintaining focus, I spoke about earlier. Because if you fall into distraction, you lose focus, even for a moment. And all of a sudden, you're slipping your timeline, or you're not getting something done. And so I keep a clear focus, and I encourage my team to do the same thing. And obviously, in elections, we deliver. Now on the first wall, I've got year one, right? There's a wall behind it. There always seems to be another wall, right? And the same strategies we used before, I'm hoping they'll work again for this upcoming election. And I'm the guy on the right with the binoculars, looking ahead. Again, appreciate what we've done, but don't rest on your laurels. Yesterday is gone. We had a great election last year in 2014. We got through it, no one died, but it's over. We have got to move forward. And I encourage my team to do the same thing and then plan for tomorrow. Circles of support. When I said earlier that we need people in our circle to give us guidance when we start thinking crazy, in my platinum circle, most of the time it's people that don't even work for the elections department. It takes a lot to get in that circle. When I get crazy, I don't want to get back to work, right? My wife obviously is in that circle. And fortunately enough, my boss is in that circle. People in that second circle, my high-level support, are some members on my team. And unfortunately, there's some folks I still struggle with to even get on this chart. And it changes, right? Based on the stresses that's going on. The trust changes, and you gotta move up a circle or down a circle. Today, if I had to measure the success of our team, trust is up. But we still have a long way to go. I think it's about 70%. Communication is up. We talk about everything, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. Teamwork is improved. And so I think we're fit for the next election, regardless of what happens. We still struggle with stability. One of my new programmers, right, I'm thinking he's gonna be the guy. He says, hey man, I'm thinking about making changes. I think I'm gonna move. And I said, what the? You see how far we've come? Again, our plans have to have plans. But there's a rosy side of this. Because once he communicated that he was planning to leave, I was telling in some organization, once you mention you're leaving, they say, well, hey, you got 2 days to clear your desk. I said, it doesn't work like that. I want you to be able to communicate with me, and there's no repercussion. I'm just glad that you got us through the first years. I'm going to help you if you think that you need to go, but I want you to stay. right? And so, again, it allowed me to put into my strategic plan and talk to management and do some things because of fear. People are motivated by fear. People are motivated by high-level risk. In the election, the biggest risk is we want to stay out of the paper, so we'll do whatever you need us to do to keep us having successful elections. That's a leverage. And cross-training. With a small team of 5 people, unfortunately, sometimes we have to conquer and divide the activities that we have in front of us. But knowing that when one guy leaves, you got a big hole in your team. You lost 20% of your knowledge. We struggle with getting folks to train each other and to provide support. So we're continuing to work with that, and that's going to take some time to figure out. Because even myself, I breaking some of my own rules. Usually when you come to manager, you say, hey, I don't want to do that work, that's for you guys to do. But I tell my team that one day I may have to back you up, right? So I have to crack open a programming book or figure out how to do pre-syncing or whatever, but just enough that we can communicate, just enough to be functional, just enough if you should get sick, I can say, hey man, go ahead, take a day, take what you need, I got it covered. Support. People like that. Okay, I want to leave you with some keys to success. I do some talking with Payback at the school sometimes, and I talk to the students, and it's the same message. I've done a shade tree lab study. I talked to a lot of people, and I asked them, if you give me 3 keys to success, what would you say? And I have homogenized them down to what you see on the board. And as I said earlier, be good at what you do. Know your stuff. People might not like you. They may actually hate you, but they'll say, man, that guy is sharp. They can respect you. Surround yourself with good people. I think I've talked about that enough. That's your army outside of you that will look out for you, that will provide you early warning and guidance and direction. And not afraid to tell you that, hey, Emmitt, you're thinking crazy. That's not a good idea. Helps. And I've had a lot of crazy thoughts over the last couple of years. Get along well with others. That says it in itself. And don't hold grudges. I was in a class when I was working on my master's in public administration, and some lobbyists were there, and I just got this phrase from. And they say, don't hold grudges. Grudges, because a guy could stab you in the back, cut your throat one day, and then you got to ask him for help the next day. Right? So you have to have the ability to get over yourself and say, okay, you got me. I'm good, but now can you help me? Right? Because you never know, you might have to stab him in the back next week. It's the game. I don't play it, I don't ignore it, but I don't let grudges stand in my way of making progress. A lot of emotional and human development here. It took a while to get here, but I can honestly say I've made it. Obviously, always keep a direction, a desire, a goal to get to where you need to be. You heard I said about hobos earlier? If you're not going nowhere, they're not going to go with you. Same thing with your life and your careers and even your team. Now, JB, I don't know if I made
time to spare.